Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into a really fascinating concept from the Qur'an, the idea that the universe is actually a self-correcting system. We're going to break down what the source material calls the Dual Caustic Law, a kind of cosmic physics where truth itself is an active, powerful force that literally reshapes reality. Okay, so let's get right into this master code. The source describes a universe that is constantly, and I mean constantly, fixing itself. In this model, truth isn't some passive idea. Nope. It's a fundamental force, kind of like gravity, that is actively filtering, purifying, and rebuilding reality from the ground up. And just to be super clear, the source isn't presenting this as some nice metaphor. It's laying it out as the fundamental physics of guidance. You can think of it as a perfect, closed-loop system. Information, or light, gets sent out, it gets tested by the messy, real world, and only the pure, undeniable truth makes it back to the source.
So let's start at the very beginning, with the foundation of this whole thing. The source calls this the source code and says it's found in the 112th chapter, or Sūrah, of the Qur'an. This is like the central processing unit for reality itself, the core logic that every other law in this system flows from.
The very first principle is ahad, and it establishes a single, indivisible origin point. The source frames this as a kind of cosmic singularity, one single point from which all of existence explodes into being, and you guessed it, the single point to which it all has to return. Right after that, you get the principle of samad. This describes a self-sufficient, sustaining core. So this isn't just a starting point that disappears, it's the central axis that the entire universe orbits around and completely depends on for its existence.
Now, these last two principles are absolutely crucial for the integrity of the whole system. First, the source has no origin of its own. It wasn't born or created by something else. And second, it has no equal, no competing mirror image. There's nothing else that shares its fundamental nature. This sets up its absolute, one-of-a-kind status.
So, what does this all boil down to? One absolute, unbreakable law. There can be no partners in creation. Every single effect in the universe, no exceptions, has to trace its path directly back to that one single cause. According to this framework, any other power source you can think of is, by definition, an illusion. So you might be wondering, how does this really abstract source code actually show up in the real world? Well, the source says it's embodied through 4 key archetypes, or witnesses, and each one of them represents a fundamental axis of reality. Now, this is where it gets really cool. This slide maps 4 core concepts to 4 key figures, and each one seals a law into the very fabric of reality. You have breath, represented by Jesus, which animates matter. That's the axis of knowledge. Then you have fire, through Abraham, representing an authority that just burns away illusion. Water, embodied by Āsiyah, shows how faith can survive under incredible pressure. And finally, the heart, through Muḥammad, is what locks this whole system into recorded history through the book. This brings us to a really key mechanism in the system. How does illusion actually fall apart? Well, the source describes a process where anything that's not built on solid truth is guaranteed to be dismantled. But here's the thing. It's not some big dramatic explosion. It's a slow, quiet decay that happens from the inside out. The source uses a verse from the story of Solomon to explain this. In the story, a staff, which represents delegated power or authority, is silently being eaten away by a tiny creature. This is seen as a universal law. Any authority that isn't based on truth is being constantly, silently worn down by the slow, grinding reality of time and matter. This slide just lays that process out perfectly. First, power is given out. But then, it's immediately put to the test, this slow, grinding test of material reality. And the illusion of that power is so convincing that the ones holding it can't even see the decay happening, until the foundation has totally rotted away and the whole thing just crumbled.
All right, now we get to the climax of this whole process, what the source calls an orbital execution. This is described as a specific path of guidance that's mapped by a sequence of 3 key Quranic chapters, or surahs. Together, they form one complete cosmic orbit.
The orbit kicks off at Sūrah 108, which stands for the moon phase. At this stage, guidance is received as a pure gift. Think about it, the moon only reflects the sun's light, right? It doesn't create its own. That's the idea. It's a measured portion of a much, much greater source. Then, something critical happens, a switch. The source connects this to a verse where what appears to be happening and what's really happening just split apart dramatically. A false claim of victory is made, but the real truth is actually protected and lifted up. And this event, this is what's said to transform that received knowledge, the reflected moonlight, into a self-glowing sun, turning a personal gift into a message for the entire world.
The orbit continues on to Surah 110, the sun phase. This is all about victory and completion. But the crucial insight here is that this success, this manifest help, it only shows up after the entire journey, the full circulation, has been finished. You have to complete the whole orbit first.
And the final phase of the orbit is Sūrah 103, which represents Earth. This is the ultimate test, the crucible of time and material pressure. The source says that in this phase, everything that can perish is consumed by loss, and only 4 things are proven to last: faith, good actions, holding on to truth, and patience.
So this entire orbital journey seals a fundamental law of how truth actually works. First, guidance is received, like the moon reflects light. Then it's completed and becomes self-luminous, like the sun. After that, it has to be proven in the real world through trial and loss, and only what makes it through that final test is ultimately raised up and preserved forever.
Okay, so we have this huge, grand, cosmic blueprint, but what on earth does it mean for an individual person? This is where the source brings it all home, framing this entire system not just as some abstract theory, but as a very personal map for a journey that you can actually live. To really get this personal path, the source brings us right back to those archetypal figures we met earlier, sealing their roles. See, each figure isn't just a historical person. They represent a specific quality or a stage that a person has to embody themselves to complete this circuit of truth.
And here it is. This is the ultimate takeaway. The source is arguing that this cosmic pattern is actually the blueprint for a personal transformation. Anyone who truly lives this knowledge will walk the exact orbital path we just mapped out. You receive guidance, you stand firm when it's denied, you complete the journey, you're tested by the world, and in the end, you return to the one singular source with no partners.
And that leaves us with one final, very provocative question. It takes this entire cosmic model, the Dual Caustic Law, and turns it directly into a personal call to action, transforming a grand theory of reality into a very intimate and very immediate challenge.